So, good day, everyone. Good day, sir. So, I will be discussing a formalist analysis of the short novel titled To Build a Fire by Jack London. So, first, let us know who is John or Jack London. So, Jack London was born on January 12, 1876 in San Francisco, California. His real name was John Griffith Chaney, and he grew up in poverty and work at young age. So he worked in different jobs such as being a sailor, factory worker, and oyster pirate. He also joined the Klondike Gold Rush in Canada, and these experiences later became inspirations for his stories. And as his journey and his achievements in life so as his life goes by, as he continues his journey, he then became a novelist, journalist, and social activist. He wrote around 50 books in only 17 years. And his famous works includes The Call of the Wild, White Fang, The Sea Wolf, and Martin Eden. His stories focused on survival and adventure, nature and wilderness, human struggles, and social inequality, and one of the first American writers to gain international fame and earn a large income through writing alone. So, yes, Jack London became significant because he combined adventure with deeper ideas about human struggles and survival. So, here, his significance. He became famous because of his writing styles in combining exciting adventure stories with deeper ideas about society, survival, and human nature. His experience also as a sailor, traveler, and a laborer gave authenticity to his works, making readers feel the hardships and struggles faced by his characters. So, his experiences iyahang gi-applied ang iyahang mga experiences sa iyahang works. So, in a way that dili ra pod mga elite people ang makarelate sa iyahang works, as well as those kanang laborers and also those in low class status. So his novels also reflected ideas influenced by thinkers such as Charles Darwin and Karl Marx, so which made his stories entertaining and meaningful. So let's proceed to the short novel, To Build a Fire by Jack London. So let's proceed to formalist analysis. So the characters. So the short novel did not stated any characters aside any man, and this man is unnamed. So sa novel, sa short novels or sa short story, kitawag or gilabel na siya dito as the man. So the man is the main character and the protagonist of the story. So the man is an inexperienced traveler in Yukon who is confident in his abilities. Next is the dog. So this dog is kuyog ni sila sa atong man. They are companions. So the dog is instinctive and closely connected to nature, allowing it to sense the danger of this extreme cold and survive in the Yukon. So, next is the setting. So, the The short novel situated in Yukon territory of Canada. So in the novel, it is during winter where the weather is extremely cold and there was no sun or hint of sun in the sky. Like it is really literally freezing and ice guys siya. And also the setting is described as extremely cold, dark, and lifeless, as in there are no hint of like a ray of the sun, and there is no sun in the sky as described, which creates a gloomy and dangerous atmosphere. Like it is exciting, but there's a sense of danger. So let's proceed to the plot. So in the exposition, so in the exposition part, which is a part 1 of the short novel or short story, the story begins in a Yukon territory during an extremely cold winter. An unnamed man travels around or alone with a dog along a frozen trail to meet his companions at a camp. So he is in the middle of a cold and isolated setting. The ground is covered in snow, like baga jud kayong yellow, and it stated there that the snow or the ground is covered with snow and it is negative 75 degrees. And this unnamed man is a newcomer to the Yukon and is traveling alone except for his dog. So as they travel, as they begin their walk, padulong ni sila sa camp wherein they will be joining some of his companions, and the man thinks happily of the lunch he carries with him and looks forward to finding his friends that night. So ang iyahang goal ani is to find and to have fun with his friends, and he is also excited to share his lunch with them. And so syempre ang setting is so cold and there's no sun daw lagi. Kuan ka nang so as the man traveled or walked, so syempre ang travel sila is walking naman jud since they are in an isolated area and it is during winter. So this man is wala siya kanang sense of fear nga unsay mahitabo ka ha if I travel even if it's freezing outside, and then wala gyud siya, di siya mahadlok even if it's tugnaw kaayo. And as they continue their journey, the man carefully watches for hidden springs beneath the snow because falling into icy water could be dangerous. So even if kabalo na siya nga, if his feet get wet, so automatic na siya frozen na siya since it's very cold there. Pero nagpadayon gyapon siya, sa kabalo na siya, and he remains confident in his abilities as described in his character. He is so confident with his abilities. So the dog, on the other hand, senses the danger in the extreme cold. As we all know that dog can sense everything. Hindi mo siya everything, but naay mga ability ang dog that human don't have. So ang kining dog ga-expect pud siya nga ang iyang companion, ang katong si man, is reliable and kaya siya papangitaan og shelter which can warm them, and they can find shelter and to build a fire. So muna to siya. Since this man or the man is overly confident about his abilities, wa siya naminaw ato ang katong Sulphur Creek old man. Ay, wa siya naminaw tong old man sa nga na iyang meet Sulphur Creek, who warned him not to travel alone in such extreme cold. So, kay lagi kanon kay siya overconfident makasiya, so wa siya naminaw ato. Maybe his thinking, kaya ra nako ni, and so dinata sa rising action. So during lunch, the man realizes how numb his hands and feet have become. So as their journey continues, there are circumstances nga na experience ni man with the dog, and na ay instances nga they nabot sila sa frozen lake or frozen pool nga kanang ang ice bitaw is I mean gawak na sila sa frozen pool, and then the ice were kanang na buak, wherein katuday siyang area nga iyahang gilakwan is frozen lake na siya. So moto natusnog iyahang tiil, wherein kabalo na siya if his feet becomes wet, so maay sa diletso, and also he can feel that his hands and feet becomes numb na iya sa sobra sa extreme cold, and even though naka-feel siya ging ato, padayon gihapon siya, he never considered about what's going to happen next. Padayon na siya kay bisag kabalo na gud siya nga it will cause delay sa ilahang journey, pero go padayon na si man. And as their journey continues, ang kining kuan the dog is kuan siya kanang unconsciously nakaadto siya sa dangerous area siya pod. So sa iya po ka overwhelm siguro pod sa atmosphere is na-shoot pod siya. So pero like na-shoot yun siya, nabasa yun siya, and then gikuha siya ni man. The man get the dog, and syempre it's extremely cold, so dali nag-ice, and moto gitabangan siya sa man nga kuha ng ice sa iyahang lawas. So by noon, there na sa lunch, as he about to eat his lunch, na-feel niya nga numb na pod iyang lips. It is numb enough for him to unable to eat. And then as he sits and tries to eat his lunch, mao na to, na-shock na siya nga murag his mouth was frozen too much, and he realizes that he could build a fire para ma-warmth ang iyahang feeling. And then after that, he then remembered the old man in Sulphur Creek warning nga katunging na siya nga dili lagi siya pwede mo travel nga siya ra isa with this ngayong ang panahon. And then mo na to, after he remembered the warning, he decides to build a fire, and he successfully build a fire, and with that naka-lunch siya, nakapanood siya, and nakapanabako pa siya. So after that, his journey continues. But after they decide to continue their journey, ang kining dog is nag-enjoy sa warmth na yun feel. And in that moment, nakasense na nanay instinct or nakasense na ang dog nga dili na sila magpadayon is because mo to na feel niya nga there is dangerous that will happen to them if magpadayon pa sila sa ilahang journey, silang travel. So as they continue their journey again, kining hagbong na sad either as the dog sense nga na mahitabo dangerous, so wala na kamalang iro. So the man accidentally breaks through thin ice and gets his feet wet up to the knees. So knowing the danger, he quickly builds another fire under a tree to dry himself. So at this point ganagbong siya suko siya nganong nahagbong siya, but wala siya nahadlok, nasuko ra siya. And then at first he feels successful and even thinks the old man's warning were too exaggerated. So even though nanay nahitabo danger sa ilahang journey, iyahagyapong yun ang na those warnings that dili dahi to tinuod, it's just an exaggeration, it's exaggerated. So here, while gathering wood, since muna to siya nabas man siya, diba? Snow falls from the tree branches above and extinguishes the fire. So while they are making up or building up a fire, this happens. So the man panics because his hands are becoming too numb to light another fire properly. And he struggles desperately with the matches, but his frozen hands prevent him from succeeding. So diri nga part is he is very desperate to build a fire, pero bisag unsa niya kay even though his hands have mittens and pero makafeel gyapon siya numb. And then kay nahitabo man nga mo lagi there are snow drift nga na hagong sa ilahang sa ilahang woods. So wala sayang ka desperate is rag 70 matches ang iyang nahurot pero wala ning gana. And then sayang pagka-desperado po, he uses his teeth nga kanang sa matches para aron masiga lang, but wala gyapon sa nakabuild. And after that, the man considers killing the dog to use its body heat for survival, but he is too weak and frozen to do so. So at this moment, he fully realizes that he may die in the cold. So since the dog is kanang wolf, it can survive in a cold atmosphere, and he thinks that if he could kill the dog, he could use the skin for body heat or the fur. I don't know what's the specific term, but something ingana siya. And then next, which ang climax? Ay, ano to? Pero nakares man siya, lagi nga he is too weak for it since he is already freezing sa katugnaw kay lagi hagong siya. So dito na niya na-realize ang slow he decides he must kill the dog and use its warm body to defrost his hands. He calls the dog, but the dog hears a strange, frightened tone in his voice and won't obey. So in that moment, nakasense sa pudong danger ang dog against iyaha. He calls toward the dog, but it backs away. And the man forces himself to stand up and This reassures the dog enough that the man can grab it with his arms because his hands are too frozen. And yeah, in this moment, aware na ang man na he is already in danger. So in terror, he runs up the creek bed with the dog following. And in this moment, that the man cannot longer build a fire, dira na niya na-realize nga he is nearly to death. That tinuod ang warning sa old man atong sa Sulphur Creek, which is kato nga time pod nga giwarningan siya naa siya gistorya something nga niya na siya nga a man can travel alone, something ning ana as a man good. So there are dominance na syempre confidence siya. So mo to ang iyahang state, iyahang iyahang response atong warning sa old man. So the man peacefully freezes to death in the snow, and the dog waits beside him for a while before sensing that he is dead. So after all those struggles and expectations nga makakuan siya, the expectations to be with his companions is naglid ready into death. So following its instincts, the dog leaves the body and heads toward the camp where it knows it can find one. So the first theme we have is that human arrogance and overconfidence can lead to destruction when nature is underestimated. So the man believes that he is strong enough to survive the Yukon wilderness alone because of his being arrogant, his being kanang overconfident, and instead of listening or makiramdam sa panahon, sa nature, he trusts too much in his own abilities, and his confidence prevents him from realizing how deadly the cold truly is. So these are the excerpts from the text. So he was a newcomer in the land at Chicago, so bago siya, dayo, and this was his first winter. So the trouble man with him was that he was without imagination. He was quick and alert in the things of life, but only in the things and not in the significances. So the man cannot fully imagine the possible consequences of the extreme cold. He understands facts like kabalo siya nga tugna winter, but o siya kabalon sa mahitabo next if musugod siya or mapadayon siya ana nga journey. Next is 50 degrees below zero stood for the bite of frost, and that hurt, and that must be guarded against by the use of mittens, ear flaps, warm moccasins, and thick socks. 50 degrees below zero was to him just precisely 50 degrees below zero. That there should be anything more to it than that was a thought that never entered his head. So in this excerpt shows that the man only sees the cold as a number or temperature, as in wala siya context, wala siya pakialam pila ba na ka degrees, and he does not emotionally understand that such cold can easily kill him. And the author uses this to show how overconfidence blinds the man from reality. So the intention why does the author includes the numbers or the number of the degrees of how it's cold, of how cold it is para na-apoy content ang reader, but then the character don't have any siya knowledge about it. Next is any man who was a man could travel alone. So mo ni ang istorya sa old man. So this reflects the man's pride. He believes independence and toughness are enough for survival. However, the story proves that nature is stronger than human pride. So which is why this theme is interpreted as human advance against nature. Next theme is ignoring the wisdom of experienced people results in regret and tragedy. So the old-timer from Sulphur Creek warned the man not to travel alone in temperature below 50 degrees. So muna to siya katong warning sa old man, but then sa hinahitabo, ginanon niya, he even mocked the old man, siya nga, exaggerated ra kaya ang warning. So the excerpt from the text from the story, that man from Sulphur Creek had spoken the truth when telling how cold it sometimes got in the country, and he had laughed at him at the time. That showed one must not be sure of things. So this shows that the man originally mocked the warning. He believed the old-timer was being overly cautious. His reaction reveals pride and immaturity because he refuses to value another person's experience. So, next theme is isolation and excessive self-reliance leave people vulnerable during hardship. So the man believes he can survive independently, wherein sa story, giprove sa story that isolation becomes dangerous in extreme situations. Without another person beside him, he has nobody to help him when disaster happens. So, okay. Ano lang siya nga, kaya niya, kay man siya, he can travel alone. But then, what happened next? Diba? So, yeah. Self-reliance leave people vulnerable during hardship. Abaw na og, he doesn't need help. So, excerpts from the novel. For a moment, he sat and stared at the spot where the fire had been. Then he grew very calm. Perhaps the old-timer on Sulphur Creek was right. If he had only had a trail mate, he would have been in no danger now. The trail mate could have built the fire. This directly explains why isolation causes downfall. Another person could have helped him build a fire, rescue him after his accident. The story suggests that, okay, so instead of trailmate mangod yung kauban, iro yung kauban, which don't have ability to build a fire or anything, ang kuha mo sa iro is to sense danger, to instinct some dangers happening that would come. And next excerpt from the text, the old-timer had been very serious in laying down the law that no man must travel alone in the Klondike after 50 below. Well, here he was, he had had the accident. He was alone and he had saved himself. So this repeated warning strengthens the idea that excessive self-reliance can become dangerous when survival depends on mutual support. So now, the point of view is third-person omniscient point of view because the narrator can read or explain the man and the dog's thoughts. So, yeah. It's the excerpt from the story. Next is the conflict. So, first conflict is that man versus nature. Obviously, the story centers on a man's struggle to survive against extreme cold and harsh environment of the Yukon wilderness. So, since mas naminaw man siya ang instinct, mas naminaw man, mas gituuhan man niya yung credibility and ability na kaya niya, it seems like i-underestimate niya ang power sa nature. Bisag giingnan na siya sa mga elder, sa old man nga dili, but he continues. So he experienced challenges and dangerous things along his journey. That is, it was 75 below zero. So this extreme cold becomes the man's greatest enemy throughout the story. Also, and to get his feet wet in such temperature meant trouble and danger. Kaya kabalan man siya diri nga, yeah, if his feet get wet, ice. So this one begins the man's serious struggle for survival because the freezing water makes it harder for him to build a fire and stay alive. Next conflict is man versus self. So this one, any man who was a man could travel alone. It represents man versus self. Because of the man's pride and stubborn belief in self-reliance. So maybe if dili siya wala siya nag-realize sa iyang kaugalingong kredibilidad, abilidad, so dili untal makasurvive or ma-save pa unta siya. So his internal conflict comes from his refusal to admit that he might need help, and his masculinity and ego prevent him from making wiser choices. So, napaisa the old timer on Sulphur Creek was right. After 50 below, a man should travel with a partner. But, ulahin na na-realize sa man, and he realizes that he was wrong. So because of pride, he rejected it, and so that his struggles and with the painful truth that his own judgment failed him also. So the symbolisms. The one symbolism is that the fire. So we can see from the title itself that the fire plays significant role in the story, wherein it represents or it symbolizes the warmth, the survival, the hope, and the man's control over life. So if kining fire was successfully built by the man and the dog, so the man might be survived and saved. Next is the dog. It symbolizes instinct, adaptation, respect for nature. So kining dog, it has this instinct or the feeling that there's something bad that can happen. But the man did not listen to the dog. And unlike the man, the dog understands the danger of the cold naturally and behaves according to survival instincts. So next are the figures of speech. So there are figures of speech in the novel because the story derived from a very descriptive lines used by the author. So first is a personification. So the blood was alive like the dog, and like the dog, it wanted to hide away and cover itself up from the fearful cold. So here, blood cannot literally want or hide as human can, but the author gives it human and animal-like actions. This personification emphasizes how extreme the cold is because even the man's body seems frightened and desperate to survive. So next is a little longer it delayed, howling under the stars that leaped and danced and shone brightly in the cold sky. So the stars here are described as if they can leap and dance, which are actions normally done by living beings or humans. In reality, stars cannot literally jump or dance. It creates a beautiful in the story, it creates a beautiful but eerie atmosphere near the end of the story. So next is onomatopoeia. So there was a sharp explosive crackle that startled him. So the word crackle there imitates the sharp sound made when a man's spit freezes in the air because of the extreme cold. And this onomatopoeia emphasizes how unbelievably cold the environment is. Next is there was the fire snapping and crackling and promising life with every dancing flame. So the word snapping and crackling imitates the sound of burning woods. These sounds make the fire feel alive and comforting. So a dancing flame can also identify as personification because flames cannot dance anyway. Next is the ice crackled and snapped when by a violent effort he opened his mouth. So the words crackled and snapped imitate the sounds of frozen ice breaking around the man's mouth. This creates vivid imagery and helps readers imagine the painful effect of the cold. Next is the simile. If he fell down, it would shatter itself like glass into brittle fragments. So the man's frozen bird is compared or identified to a glass. This simile emphasizes how solid and frozen everything becomes in extremely cold because it describes as like glass into brittle fragments. Next, running around like a chicken when its head cut off. So in this line where he was panicking because he is aware that he is near to death. And the man compares his panic and desperate running to a headless chicken moving wildly without direction. This simile shows his realization that fear had made him irrational and helpless. Next is the metaphor. So those old-timers were rather womanish. So the man is not literally saying that the old-timers are women. Instead, he compares them to what he believes are feminine qualities such as overly cautious, fearful, or weak. By using the word womanish, the woman mocked the old-timers for warning him not to travel alone in extreme cold. So, next, the wires were pretty well down between him and his finger. And so the author compares the man's nervous system to electrical wires. And this metaphor helps readers understand how numb, so it somehow helps the reader identify or feel how numb and disconnected his fingers have become due to the cold. The imagery we had here, day had broken golden gray, exceedingly cold and gray. So in this excerpt, the readers can easily identify what was the atmosphere or the setting in the story. Next is the frozen moisture of its breathing had settled on its fur in a fine powder of froze, and especially were its jaws, muzzle, and eyelashes whitened by its crystal breath. So it is extremely described, and that detailed description creates vivid visual imagery that helps readers imagine how severe the cold conditions are. And that's all for the formalist analysis. Thank you.